$62,000 has gone from my checking account and into this car. You can skip to this timestamp if you just want to see the purchase price breakdown, or to this timestamp if you just wish to see the maintenance and charging costs after 5.5 years and 150,000 miles. But first I'm going to talk about why I purchased one. I got my driver's license at 16 and was driving my parents' 1998 Jeep Cherokee. But I had become EV obsessed around 2013 or 2014 as a kid, and it was in 2018 that I finally got to transition from the Cherokee to a 2014 Nissan Leaf. And I loved it. It checked all my boxes as the perfect car for me because it was unique. You didn't see it on the road every day. It was very fun to drive. It had lots of storage space considering the size, and I was big into environmentalism as a kid. But on a good day, I could still only drive about 60 miles on a full battery, which means charge to 100%, drain it to 0, and I just get stranded after 60 miles. And that was fine when I was just around town, but sadly, I could just no longer rely on this range as I began to want to go farther. So I decided I need something else, but do I focus on what's realistic and what's most effective and affordable for my use cases? Say around the $10,000 to $20,000 range, stuff like my dream childhood car, which was a Jeep Wrangler, or some other cars that had caught my eye, like the Toyota FJ Cruiser, which I kind of saw as a more unique Wrangler, because you see Jeeps everywhere, but it's not every day you see an FJ Cruiser, or something smaller, better on gas, that could still have the storage I needed, like say a Mini Cooper. I just thought they looked cool. Or do I go maximum fun, but expensive and unrealistic? Say a used Tesla, at the time that would be a Model S or a Model X, or try to get another early EV model like the Hyundai Kona EV, or even a newer Nissan Leaf. Now I did like certain gasoline cars at the time as well. Some that stood out to me were the C7 Corvette, the Audi RS7, or a Porsche 718 like a Cayman S or something. But you'll notice that one car is missing from this list, that being the Model 3 that I actually purchased. Well, it actually just didn't exist yet. Now, since 2006, Tesla had been hinting at the Model 3 coming out, but it wasn't unveiled until a decade later. But when it finally was, it was promised to be $35,000. And when they started delivering them the next year, they exceeded all expectations. It had 50% more range than advertised, twice the acceleration, but it was also twice as expensive. They started by selling the highest tier models first and slowly made the cheaper trims. I kept wondering if I should go for an extremely budget-friendly but relatively temporary car today, or just go straight into a car that I hope to own for a very long time. Because I was dead set on a Tesla regardless at this point. I had gotten to test drive the Model S a few times and it was an incredible experience, but they were an extremely expensive car. But in 2019, they actually released the $35,000 Model 3. And then I was like, maybe I shouldn't get a used car. But what if I just got a new car? Now, as of recording this video, there are just 3 Model 3 trims available, but back in 2019, they released the Standard Range, the Standard Range Plus, the Mid-Range, the Long Range Rear-Wheel Drive, the Long Range All-Wheel Drive, the Performance, and my favorite, the Stealth Performance, which I actually got to test drive. It was basically a hidden menu item that you had to call into Tesla and special request, where they would take the lower spec long range Model 3, but put the internals of the Performance Model 3. So it looks like the cheap Model 3, but has the power and capability of the Performance model. And as much as I wanted the Stealth Performance, and it was cheaper than the Performance, I settled on the Standard Range Plus, which was plenty capable and advertised to do 240 miles on a single charge, which is 4 times the range that I had in the Nissan Leaf. But of course, they always tack on some extra fees. So that $35,000 price was actually $35,400, as well as an additional $4,500 for the Standard Range Plus. Now I did go with the included paint color of black and the included 18-inch wheels. However, I did upgrade the interior to white for $1,000, and I paid $1,200 for the delivery and documents, as well as a 3% sales tax, and shortly after buying the car, I upgraded the software inside to full self-driving for $7,000. So at the end of the day, my car was spec'd out to $49,783, and I financed it. I put $25,000 down with a $25,000 loan for 72 months. It was at 3.99%, so I was expected to pay just over $3,000 in interest, but because I threw some extra cash at it and paid it off early, In the end, I paid $2,700 in interest on my loan. And so including interest, it was just over $52,000. Now for reference, today, you can get my car, like if I sold it to you, it would be between $16,000 to $24,000, depending on mileage and features, like whether it has full self-driving, white interior, upgraded wheels, whatever. And now onto ownership and how much it cost me from repairs and maintenance and everything in between. And from July 2019 when I purchased it, all the way to July 2021, I didn't do anything to it. It was a very interesting experience. I just got in and drove it very hard, might I add, every day for 24 months. All I had to do was tires, getting rotations and purchasing new tires, as well as I got a few nails in my tire. But I will say in 2019, I actually paid Tesla themselves to rotate my tires. It was $94. And believe it or not, I do not regret paying for this. Now, you can get free rotations at places like Discount Tire and some local shops as well. But I tried to get my tires rotated and a nail fixed at Discount Tire. This is going to sound insane, but they couldn't do it. My town had essentially no Teslas at this time. And so Discount Tire, no matter how hard they tried, the entire team at my shop could not drive this car. They couldn't get the door open. They couldn't get it into drive. They couldn't get it onto their lift. I ended up having to go back to the shop 3 times because they called me 3 times to try and deal with my car. I ended up staying at the shop and I was still there for hours, and I was like, all right, my time is worth more than this. I'm just gonna bring it to Tesla and pay them to do it. So today, yes, you can just bring it to Discount Tire. Teslas are everywhere now, so they're used to it. But 5 years ago, they genuinely couldn't work on Teslas. It was so bizarre. Also in 2020, I was vinyl wrapping my car and I personally broke a side camera, so I bought a new one. It was $214, but I did not include that in maintenance since that was a cosmetic whoopsie that I did on my part. So 2 years after purchase, I had my first issue, which was a sensor not working. Now, basically the car has overheat protection, so if you don't want the interior to heat up more than like 110 degrees while it's parked, it'll kick in the AC and run until it's cooler, but mine was not working. And so every time I got in the car in the summer, it was 175 degrees inside. Now this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that's one of the nice little Tesla features is it cools it off for you. So I brought it in to get that sensor replaced and they claimed that it wasn't broken. They said it was working fine per our tests. And I was like, okay, that's weird. So I leave. But about a month and a half later, I went in for actually multiple issues. The first being that my other side camera had actually broken. It ended up getting moisture inside, I assume because the seal was bad, and so it just killed the camera. Now this was replaced under warranty because it was a faulty seal. And this time, I actually got them to replace the overheat sensor. They finally realized, oh, you were right, it is broken. So they replaced that under warranty. And I had my first upper control arm replaced. It connects to the wheels as part of the suspension. It was making a grinding noise when I turn. However, luckily I still had my mechanical warranty, which I think was up to 50,000 miles, so that was replaced for free as well. But then 1 month later, the same noise started happening again, but on the other side of the vehicle. Now this time, I regret this, however, they didn't replace the control arm. All they did was re-grease and reseal the joints that connect it. What they had realized is it was poorly sealed to begin with, and so water was coming on, probably just from rain and driving on a wet road, and it basically washed the grease out. So instead of lubrication, it was just metal grinding on metal. However, the noise went away and it drove normally after they re-greased it. And then nothing happened for about half a year until my low voltage battery died, which was a just quick and easy $121. You get this replaced about every 3 years, but now I know you can do it yourself for about $90 if you want to save that $30 in labor. And then 3 months later, my control arm, which they had re-greased, was grinding once again. Now at this point, I knew what the sound was. On the invoice, it just says customer states, I need another control arm. And I had to pay for it this time because the car was now at 71,000 miles, which was outside of that warranty. And I should have forced them to replace it the first time under warranty because now it was out of pocket for $193. And then 1 month later, at 72,000 miles, my front lower left lateral link had gone bad, which was $782. And it was making an even worse noise, but it was apparently a common issue. Sadly though, they did not cover this because it was out of warranty. Also, my trunk lid stopped closing. It would basically just slam on metal but not actually latch. Now it turns out this was a known issue, so even though it was out of warranty, they did replace this for free. And then exactly a year later, almost down to the day, I go in once again. This time because the driver's seat sensor had died and I got that replaced. However, my front right lateral link had finally gone bad. This was 30,000 miles after the first one. I don't know why they were so uneven with each other, but at 102,000 miles, I got that replaced and it was $705. It was a little bit cheaper this time, I'm not sure why. And then 6 months later, I went in, actually this year, March 2024, because my oil pump had gone bad. So while this car doesn't take traditional vehicle oil, it does have an oil pump. It's actually pretty cheap. It was mostly labor cost and it came out to $520. This was at 118,000 miles. And so in total, the maintenance cost for all the mechanical parts inside and out of my Tesla was $2,321. So an average of just over $400 a year in maintenance. However, it definitely chews through tires. That's partly because I'm a bit of a quick driver, but also because it's a heavy car and it just runs through tires quite a bit. However, because they're expensive and because I'm willing to take the risk of, basically I drive all my tires down to the wire, like 032 trim, until I see something about to fail on my tire, I just keep on driving. And so doing so means that I've gone through 6 sets of tires. So I ran through the set that was on the car, and then 1 year later, I bought an entire new set for $1,120. These were the Tesla recommended, and I actually got them from Tesla, Michelin Pilot Sports, and they feel incredible. I believe these have a foam on the interior that makes them quieter. And yeah, they're very high performance. I was very impressed by them. Then a year later, I got just 2 tires replaced. I got the rear replaced. And so I got the same tires, $674. And then half a year later, just 1 tire got replaced because I had an irreparable nail puncture. And that was $220 for 1 tire, which yes, means that I now have uneven tires all around. And so 6 months later, I got all 4 tires replaced once again with the same Michelin Pilot Sports, but this time I got them from Discount Tire. It was like $8 cheaper, pretty much the same. A year later, I get another set of 4 tires, but this time I downgraded to the Michelin Primacy MXM4s. And they still felt perfectly fine, they were great. I should have gotten these sooner for $851. And then a year later, this year in 2024, I downgraded once again because I was doing a lot of Uber as well as Amazon Flex. So I didn't want to take a risk with Uber passengers. I wanted it to, be safe for them. I was driving so many miles for Amazon that I decided to get the absolute cheapest tires I could. The cheapest ones I could find for the Model 3 with my wheel size was the Kumho Majesties, and they're cheap. They're half the price of the Michelin at $650 for a set of 4, but you can tell why they're so cheap. They're loud, they're hard, they don't have a lot of grip, so if I floor it, they actually spin up just a tiny bit. They're not a good tire, but they're cheap and you get what you pay for. Now, as of recording, these tires are completely bald, but yeah, I've gone through 23 tires on this vehicle. This is the most expensive thing that I've done, but I kind of have to. There's also some small purchases I did. Like on the Tesla shop, I purchased a NEMA 1450 adapter, which is a type of charger, for $37. I also got a home charger installed, which I did include in the total price of this vehicle because, well, I used it to fuel it up. It was $377 to get it professionally installed by an electrician. He also reconfigured my breakers in the electric panel to free up space and make it all work. I then bought 2 sets of cabin filters over the years. It was $36 each time. I spent about $15 on wiper fluid. I got windshield wipers twice, and I spent $60 on a paint repair kit because there were some chips. Teslas have pretty soft paint and it doesn't hold up too great. But now we can move on to body damage, which I'll explain what was and wasn't included. So I ended up hitting a tire that flew up in the road, and this damaged my front bumper, and I, drove over it, so it damaged my undercarriage as well. This was $2,520 in repairs, but luckily my insurance agreed this was considered a collision, so they covered it. I just paid my $500 deductible. But then just a month later, in August of 2020, my rear bumper ripped off. It was $2,005 to replace because it was irreparable, and this is because I was driving during a flash flood. Now, I decided not to include the front bumper damage and the cost of this car because that wasn't Tesla's fault, that was me hitting a tire. However, I am including my $500 deductible for the rear bumper because I truly believe that this was Tesla's fault. It was actually a known issue at the time that if you drive through just a few inches of water, there was a part of the rear bumper in the Model 3 where water collects, and that water, well, builds up, adds weight, and rips the bumper off while you're driving. Now, I told Tesla this. I was like, you literally look at these news articles, you admitted yourself that this is an issue, but they said that my model was not susceptible to these issues. They said that during 2019 is when they did the switch to the updated bumper that no longer has this problem. I don't know, man. In the end, I could not convince Tesla, and I had to do it through insurance, which is why I did include that $500 deductible into the maintenance. Okay, on to charging to actually get this car moving. Well, the car used 39,183 kilowatt hours of electricity, and if I did the math right, that's equivalent to charging an iPhone 2 million times. I spent $9,012 on charging. Now, you can charge at home, you can charge at superchargers, or you can charge at third-party non-Tesla chargers. If I had done all the charging just at my house, it would have been about $6,600. If I did it all with superchargers, it would have been about $14,000. But I personally did 2/3 of my charging at home and 1/3 at Tesla superchargers, which gives me that $9,000 total. Now, according to the Tesla app, which keeps track of my energy usage, they claim I saved about 50% by not purchasing gas. And to do this calculation, they use premium gas, which makes sense because Tesla competes with cars that use premium gas like BMWs, Mercedes, but it's definitely true. I've saved a lot on charging. I would guess I've saved at least $6,000 to $7,000, if not up to $9,000 or $10,000 just by not having to buy gas. And that does not include all of the savings that I got from, well, having so little maintenance. There's been no oil or fluids I have to change, no components to an engine that I have to deal with like spark plugs or I don't know much about engines, as well as things that you just wouldn't think about. For example, it's very rare that you use the brakes of a Tesla because it slows down using the motor, which is called regenerative braking, which actually charges your battery as you drive. And so because of that, my brake pads after 150,000 miles still look brand new, as well as my rotors. Like, you can't even tell that there's any miles on them, which I think is pretty crazy. So not only does that save me money because there's so few moving and used parts in this car, but it's just convenient to not have to think about the maintenance. I just think it's crazy that 2 years of car ownership and I didn't have to do anything to it. I just drove it every day and it worked fine. Not to mention, I was driving about 36,000 miles a year on average, which is 3 times what the average American does. And then on to taxes. I got to register it every year. It's about $400. There's also now an EV tax, so thank you for that, government. And you know what I somehow forgot, which I just realized while editing this video, is I forgot to include the EV tax credit that I got. Because I purchased this vehicle new, I got a $7,500 EV tax credit. And this is not a deduction. This is actually a subtraction from what I owe. So I just took my tax bill, which I can't remember what it was. Let's say it was $30,000 that year. I literally just subtracted $7,500 from that and only had to pay $22,500. Also, insurance is about $98 a month for me, so I've spent just over $6,000 on insurance. They're surprisingly affordable to insure. I mean, under $100 a month. And yeah, so in the end, that brings me to my $62,377 total. The only things I did not include are the cosmetics, that being the vinyl wrap I put on, and the traffic tickets plus lawyer fees plus court fees. So yeah, aside from that though, this is the entire cost of everything that's gone into this vehicle from day one back in 2019 to literally today. But I would think it's fair to say that you can subtract $7,500 from this total cost, because if I hadn't purchased this car, I would have had to pay that additional $7,500. So a penny saved is a penny earned in this case. And so the total cost per mile so far during ownership is about 36 cents per mile. Now, if you look at the IRS mileage deduction, they estimate it costs 65.5 cents per mile to operate a vehicle. So it's essentially half the price for me to not only operate, but to actually own this vehicle. And that is including purchasing it brand new and after just 5 years. And I plan on keeping this car. So I just paid the car off a couple months ago. I did a video on paying it off, which means that now that I own it, now that it's actually truly mine, the cost to own is going to become cheaper and cheaper over time. So if I continue driving 36,000 miles a year, I'll be paying about $4,400 per year that I'm driving. That comes out to just 12 cents per mile when you include the charging, the tires, the maintenance, the taxes, and the insurance. So starting now, because it's now paid off, I'll be going from 36 cents per mile to just 12 cents per mile, which will bring the total lifetime ownership average of the car to be much lower. So after about 300,000 miles total, that'll be about 22 cents per mile over the lifetime of the vehicle. Now, this isn't special to the Tesla in particular. I would say the one difference is I don't have to worry about it breaking down very much. Now, because I have one of the early Model 3s and I have probably one of the highest mileage Model 3s, I can't really say exactly how long other components like the motor or the battery are going to last. Now, if you look at the Model S, which is Tesla's second oldest model, they've been on the road since 2012 or maybe 2011. And so you have seen these batteries start to fail. And the replacement is not cheap if you do it from Tesla. Luckily, they've improved the technology since making the Model S, but I'm hoping I can get at least 300,000 miles out of this battery, because everybody always is like, what are you gonna do when you need a battery replacement? Well, realistically, the battery is going to outlast pretty much everything else in this car. So I'm personally not super concerned about it, and honestly, I feel like I've 100% gotten my money's worth, and I really don't have any regrets. The same way people like to argue over whether Teslas are truly eco-friendly or not. Well, yes, I got into EVs because of the environment, but today I don't actually care. If EVs were actually worse for the environment, I would still drive them because they're more fun. But no, they are better for the environment. It is true they create a larger carbon footprint up front when they're being manufactured, but it's not that much larger, and that is made up pretty quickly when they're driven. So since I've driven mine so much, yes, it's definitely more environmentally friendly, but that's really not something I focus on at all. Nowadays, I focus more on the cost and just the fun aspect. And so similarly to how it's less eco-friendly up front and more eco-friendly the longer you drive it, which is the opposite for most vehicles, Teslas also come with a large upfront cost when you purchase it, but the longer you own it, the cheaper it becomes. Because yes, I'll have to do some more replacements over the years. Maybe my control arms will go bad again. I should mention I drive this car extremely aggressively and very rough, including off-road. So yes, it is normal for the control arms to go out on a Tesla, but I suspect mine are particularly worn down just because of my driving. But I am very pleased at how this car has held up. It is my favorite thing I have ever purchased, and there's a lot of EV enthusiasts who say they just can't imagine owning a Tesla, but they'll always drive EVs. And funnily, I'm the opposite, because if I'm buying an EV, I can't imagine it not being a Tesla. But I plan on sticking just with this one for as long as I can. I'm not in a rush to replace it. And when I do, yeah, I'd probably just get another Model 3, maybe a Model S, who knows, we'll see. You'll get to see too for whenever the day comes. So hopefully you enjoyed. I've certainly enjoyed this car, and I do recommend them. I'm still a Tesla fan after 150,000 miles. If you want to see my other Tesla-related videos, you can check out my Turo series, as well as a couple I've done on this Model 3, but there will be more to come. So that's it. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.